As we now jump into decoding the book of Daniel. All right, so here is this chart again that I just want to remind you of. The first 4 chapters of Daniel all have to do with Daniel. But what many don't realize is almost 70 years go by before the rest of the book of Daniel is penned or even happens. And you'll notice it's not in order chapter-wise. We see Daniel chapter 7 is the first year of Belshazzar when he has the vision of the lion and the bear and the leopard and the monster. And then Daniel 8 and 5 are both the third year of Belshazzar. This time he has the same repeat vision of the first year, but this time Persia is a ram and Greece is a goat, and it has the 4 horns. And then, of course, the final year is chapter 5, which is with the handwriting on the wall. Well, then the next 4 chapters, 6, 9, 11, and 12, all happen the first year of Darius the Mede. This is where he's thrown in the lion's den. We have the vision or the explanation of the 70 years of judgment, and he prays, and he has a vision of 70 weeks. And then lastly, set aside all by itself, the book of Daniel really ends with chapter 10, which is the third year of Cyrus, and there is this great warfare with Persia. Now, we've already covered Daniel 7, but I just want to set the stage again. Daniel 7 is the first year of Belshazzar, you'll see in 1 through 3, king of Babylon. And Daniel has a dream and the visions of his head upon his bed. And then what does he do? He gets a pencil and paper and he writes down the dream. And then he told people all about it. And Daniel spoke and said, I saw in my vision by night, behold, the 4 winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea, and 4 great beasts come up from the sea, and they were all diverse one from another. And then in verse 4 through 7, he describes these beasts, these 4 great beasts. The first one, he says, was like a lion. Now I'm going to go to this little picture here. If you remember, about 70 years earlier, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream of this image. He was going to kill all the wise men. But Daniel said, hey, wait just a minute, give me a chance. And God reveals to Daniel Nebuchadnezzar's dream, where Nebuchadnezzar is the head of gold, which is Babylon. The 2 arms represent the silver, represent the Medes and the Persians. Then we have Greece, followed by Rome. And this is all the second year of Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel chapter 2 and 3. We now jump to Daniel chapter 7, the first year of Belshazzar, and we see the first beast was a lion, and we're going to find a lion represents Babylon. So now, rather than interpreting Nebuchadnezzar's dream, Daniel's having his own vision of the very same thing, but with animals rather than a statue. Okay, so it says in Daniel 7, 4 through 7, the first one was like a lion and had eagle's wings. He beheld until the wings were plucked off and was lifted from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Then it says there was a second beast like a bear. Here's our bear. And it raised itself up on one side, 3 ribs in the mouth between its teeth. And they said, arise, devour much flesh. After this, there comes a leopard. So here's our leopard. And this leopard has 4 heads. Okay, that's what it says. And dominion was given to it. After this, I saw in the night vision a 4th beast. Now this 4th beast represents Rome. And it was like a monster. Okay, and it says it had 10 horns. All right, let me see where I'm at here. Okay. Then, in Daniel 7, 23 through 25, it says, thus he said, the 4th beast will be the 4th kingdom on the earth, It will be diverse from all kingdoms. It'll devour the whole earth and will tread it down, break it to pieces. And 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that will arise. Another will arise after them. He'll be diverse from the first. He'll subdue 3 others. He'll speak great words against the Most High. He'll wear out the saints of the Most High and think to change times and laws. They will be given to his hand until times, and the dividing of time. All right, so let's go into that. But first, Daniel chapter 8, where we're going to jump into, is now the 3rd year of Belshazzar. And at this time, the Babylonian kingdom is basically over. So this time he doesn't have the vision of Babylon and the lion. He jumps to the Medes and the Persians, which are represented by the 2 horns of the ram, followed by Greece being the goat with the notable horn, being Alexander the Great. Okay, and then the 4 horns become the 4 generals, and the one overthrowing 3 is Antiochus overthrowing the other 3 generals. I think everyone is familiar with that. But I want you to see this from Daniel 7:23 through 25. It talks about this 4th beast, which represents Rome, right? That's the big monster. I think everyone knows that refers to Rome because the Rome was the next kingdom that destroyed Israel in 70 AD. I mean, it's obvious it was Rome, no question. But here's what I want you to see. It says there's going to be someone who thinks to change times and laws. And they will be given to his hand until a times, and the dividing of time. How many times do we hear time? A lot. Okay, here it is in Hebrew. I want you to see this. Let's look at the very bottom in red where it says a time, times, and a half a time. Do you see that? If you go right above it in the transliteration, you see in red, Idan, the Idanin, Uvlag, Idan. And then if you look up at the Hebrew, the bottom 3, you see the same thing. And that Hebrew word for time is the Ayin Dalet Nun. Okay? Idan, Idan, Idan. Does everyone see that? But look at this. Where he says above he wants to change the times and the laws. It's a different Hebrew word, and yet in English it's the same word. Okay, that's actually it's Aramaic. But look at this. The word you'll see in black at the very bottom, times, zimnin. And then you'll see on the far left over there, zimnin. And then in green is the dot, which is laws. So I want you to notice in English you see the same word, but in Aramaic it is a different word with a different meaning, obviously, because it's a different word. So what is it? Zimnin, the equivalent would be the moed. Here is someone who wants to change the appointed times. Someone from Rome is going to want to change Passover. They're going to want to change all the appointed times and create new religious holidays because that word dot, which is translated as law, means religion. It's not civil law he wants to change, but religious laws. So someone from the Roman Empire is going to think to change the appointed times and religious law. And this is someone who is not good. All right. This is why they, to me, if you're changing religious law, this is a spirit of lawlessness. One of the first ones to exhibit that would be Jeroboam, who wanted to change when the Feast of Tabernacles was from the 7th month to the 8th month. Now, Antiochus tried to stop the appointed times, but Constantine, the one who wanted to change the appointed times, he thought to change when the Sabbath was. He thought to change when, and now have Christmas and now have Easter. This is not good. Okay, and then that's chapter 7, which is the 1st year of Belshazzar. 2 years later, we're at the 3rd year of Belshazzar, and now he has a new perspective, same dream. And in Daniel 8:1, look at this. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, even unto me, Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. What is that telling you? That is telling you the 3rd year, the dream he's having is patterned after the same dream he had the 1st year. In other words, it's the same story, different characters. You following me? That's important. Listen to Daniel 8 through 10. What do we see? Therefore the he-goat waxed very great when he was strong. The great horn was broken, which refers to who? The great horn is Alexander the Great. And before it came up 4 notable ones. Who were they? The 4 generals. So again, this Daniel 8 is a repetition of Daniel 7. 2 years later, same dream. Okay, just a little different scenario. And it goes on and it says, and out of one of them came forth a little horn. This was Antiochus Epiphanes, which waxed exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, toward the pleasant land. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven, cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped on them. We always know that refers to Israel. Israel will be as the stars of heaven, okay? And that's who he stomped on. As a matter of fact, look at Daniel 8:11 through 16. It says, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. That's what Antiochus Epiphanes did. And the place of his sanctuary was cast down. A host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and the practice and prospered. It says, then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said to that certain saint which spoke, how long will be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, the transgression of desolation, to get both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? And he said to me, 2,300 evenings and mornings. And as you know, that is not 2,300 days. That refers to the evening and morning sacrifices, which are 2 a day. So you cut this in half. It's 1,150 days, which historically was exactly the number of days from when they set up the idol to when the Hanukkah event was celebrated and it was cleansed. Now, look at this though. It says, then will the sanctuary be cleansed? And it came to pass that even I, Daniel, who saw the vision, I was looking for the meaning, and behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, hey, Gabriel, help this kid understand the vision. Okay. Now, let's look at Daniel 8:20 through 22. Daniel's in his 80s. He's not a kid at this time, but he's explaining the vision, and he says, the ram that you saw having the 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. There it is. The rough goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn between his eyes is the first king, Alexander the Great. And that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. In other words, 4 other kings are going to come. They're not going to be as strong as Alexander the Great. And again, this refers to his 4 generals. I think historically everybody knows this. So we see Daniel 8 as a repetition of Daniel 7. Now, look at this in Daniel 8, how it ends in verse 26 and 27. The vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true. Wherefore shut up the vision, it will be yet for many days. And look what Daniel says. And I, Daniel, fainted. I was sick certain days. But afterward I got up and did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision. But no one understood it, even though Gabriel was told to explain it to me. Doggone it, I still didn't get it. And not only that, I've gotten sick. I'm fainting. Maybe it was from the king's food. No, who knows? All right, now, here's something I want to show you that you haven't seen before. This next slide. As the slide I previously showed you, I'll go back to it. Here, let's go. Oh, not that one, that one. That one. Okay. Now, I have here kind of the orders of the chapters, but I want you to realize 6, 9, 11, and 12 are all the first year of Darius. So in one sense, they could be read parallel. You know what I mean? They don't necessarily have to be read in a specific order like I have. That's just the order that I put them in. But I want you now, all of you lovers of prophecy, to read the book of Daniel this way. I want you to take a look at this here. Okay. The first year of Belshazzar is Daniel chapter 7, and there we see the Medes and the Persians are referred to as a bear. Now we go to the third year of Belshazzar, and Daniel 8 and Daniel 5 are parallel. They're both the third year. Now, if you remember, Daniel 8 is where Persia is now represented by the ram instead of the bear. And Daniel 5 is the handwriting on the wall, and it's all over for Belshazzar. So in one sense, we know the entire chapter of Daniel 5 happens within 24 hours. That would be typically the last chapter, but I just want you to know you can go from Daniel 7 to 8, which seems normal chronologically, but you can also go from Daniel 7 to 5. But here is what happens next. Because these 4 in red are all the first year of Darius, they can actually be read in different orders. But I found there were 2 streams that seemed to be connected. The way I would read this, I would go from Daniel 5 to 6, because we know Daniel 5 is actually the last one. But then, not only can you go from Daniel 5 to 6, then go from chapter 6 to 9. Okay, Daniel 6 is where he's thrown in the lion's den. And then 9 is, if you remember, he was thrown in the lion's den because he was praying. Well, chapter 9 tells you what he was praying. That's why Daniel 9 is connected to 6, because he was thrown for his prayers and supplications. And Daniel 9 says, these are my prayers and supplications. And then from 9, you can go right down to 12, because 12 is then the vision of the 70 weeks. And then also the final top secret, seal it up, don't let anybody hear about it, okay? So in one sense, you can go Daniel 7, 5, 6, 9, and 12. They seem to be tied together. Now, the other stream is Daniel 8. I mean, if you want to read 6, you can. But what's really cool is if you read Daniel 8 and go right to Daniel 11, because in Daniel 8, he's feeling sick, right? And he's fainting. Well, what happens? In Daniel 11, someone comes along and strengthens him. So that seems natural that would flow. And then you go to Daniel 12. At the very end, he's almost like Superman. I'm strengthened. Okay, so it's kind of an interesting way that you actually can read these chapters. If you remember, what do we say at the end of every book of the Torah? Kazak, Vanet, Kazak. Be strong, be strengthened. That basically comes from Daniel 10. That's how Daniel 10 ends. With him telling him, be strong, and be strengthened. And he says that I was strengthened. So anyway, there's a couple of ways to read the book of Daniel. So I just wanted you to realize that. Now, also, I want you to know, again, those 4 notable horns had to do with the 4 generals of Alexander the Great, who then became the political leaders of these 4 different areas. Okay, let's see where I am at on my notes. Okay, see, Daniel 8, what we just read, he said, I, Daniel, fainted. I was sick certain days, correct? Now look at Daniel 11:1. Now, think about this. If you did not read Daniel 8, if you just opened your Bible to Daniel 11 and you started reading Daniel 11 without knowing anything else, and you read, also, I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. Who's the I and who's the him? Unless you know where to connect it, you don't know if this is Daniel confirming Darius. Is this Gabriel confirming Darius? Or in this time of transition, is Gabriel strengthening and confirming Daniel, who was sick and needed understanding? This is why you also will notice that Daniel 11, there is no vision. Daniel 11 is just a further explanation of a previous vision. As a matter of fact, let's go to Daniel 11, verse 2 and 3. It says, and now, he says, I will show you the truth. So you can see this is someone who's explaining a vision. So it isn't Daniel and it isn't Darius. This is Gabriel explaining things to Daniel here. And he says, behold, 3 more kings will arise in Persia. A 4th will be far richer than all of them. And when he's become strong through his riches, he's going to stir up all against the kingdom of Greece. And then a mighty king will rise, Alexander the Great, who will rule with great dominion and do as he wills. Now, how many of you like history? There's all kinds of history, American history, world history, whatever. I love history. Now, Alexander the Great is on the move. He's conquering the whole known world there. What happens when he comes to Israel? He wants to conquer Jerusalem, right? Get a load of this. This comes from a book that was written 2,000 years ago. Josephus, in his book, Antiquity of the Jews, book 11, chapter 8, section 5. Listen to this. Alexander the Great is coming, right? When he saw all the multitude at a distance in white garments, all the priests had their white garments on, greeting Alexander as he's coming. And it says, and the high priest in purple and scarlet clothing. So he's got the high priest's garments on. This is how he's being greeted as he approaches Jerusalem. And he had his mitre on his head, having the golden plate whereon the name of God was engraved, holy to the Lord. Alexander made everyone step back, and he approached by himself. And he adored that name, and at first he salutes the high priest. And then the Jews also saluted him, and with one voice saluted Alexander and encompassed him all about. Whereupon the kings of Syria and the rest were surprised at what Alexander had done, and supposed him disordered in his mind. However, Parmenio, this one man, alone went up to Alexander and asked him how it came to pass that when all the others adored him, Alexander, he would adore the high priest of the Jews. To whom he replied, I didn't adore him, but the God who has honored him with his high priesthood. For I saw this very person in a dream, in this very clothing, when I was in Macedonia, who when I was considering with myself how I might obtain the dominion of Asia, exhorted me to make no delay, but to boldly pass over the sea there, for that he would conduct my army, he would give me the dominion over the Persians, whence it is that having seen no other in that clothing, and now seeing this person in it, and remembering that vision and the exhortation which I had in my dream, I believe that I bring this army under the divine conduct, and shall therewith conquer Darius to destroy the power of the Persians, and that all things will succeed according to what is in my own mind. And when he had said this to Parmenio, it says, let me see, and had given the high priest his right hand. He shakes the right hand of the high priest, Alexander does. And with the priest running along beside him, he came into the city. And when he went up into the temple, he offered sacrifices to God according to the high priest's direction, and magnificently treated both the high priest and the priests. And when the book of Daniel was showed him, wherein Daniel declared that one of the Greeks should destroy the empire of the Persians, he supposed that himself was the person intended. And as he was then glad, he dismissed the multitude for the present, but the next day he called them back to him and bid them to ask what favor they pleased of him. Whereupon the high priest desired that they just might enjoy the laws of their forefathers and might pay no taxes in their 7th year. And he granted all they desired. And when they entreated him that he would permit the Jews in Babylon and Media to also enjoy their own laws, he willingly promised to do hereafter whatever they desired. And when he said to the multitude that if any of them would want to join his army, on this condition, they should still continue under the laws of their forefathers and live according to them, then he would be willing to take with him many that were ready to accompany him in his wars. But wait, there's more. So when Alexander had thus settled matters at Jerusalem, he led his army into the neighboring cities. And when all the inhabitants to whom he came received him with great kindness, the Samaritans, who had then Shechem for their metropolis, a city on Mount Gerizim, and inhabited by apostates of the Jewish nation, seeing that Alexander had so greatly honored the Jews, determined to profess themselves as being Jews. For such is the disposition of the Samaritans, as we have already elsewhere declared, that when the Jews are in adversity, they deny that they are their relatives, and then they confess the truth. But when they perceive some good fortune has befallen them, they immediately pretend to have communion with them, saying that they belong to the Jews, and derive their genealogy from the posterity of Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh. Okay, but that's historically what happened. And this is why many Jews named their children after Alexander. As a matter of fact, in Mark 15:21, when they compelled Simon the Cyrenian coming out of the country to bear his cross, they say he was the father of Alexander and Rufus. This was the two kids' names. Okay, now, back to Daniel. 11. Let me see. Hey, Jill, do you have page 11? I have page 10, but there is more, and I don't have my page 11. For some reason, it didn't print. I hope it printed for you. Yep. Oh, good. I need your page 11. That's right. We'd be in trouble without... Oh, I need 12 also. There's a 12. Okay. Thank you. All right, here we are. Okay. Let's see. Okay, Daniel 11, verse 4. I believe that's where we are. Okay, it says, and as soon as he has arisen, referring to Alexander, his kingdom will be broken and divided toward the four winds of heaven, but not to his posterity. Why? His kids didn't inherit it. His four generals did. Okay? Not according also to the authority with which he ruled, for his kingdom will be plucked up and go to others. Now, obviously, you can see this, Daniel 11 ties into chapter 8. That's why I want to read Daniel chapter 8, then go to 11 for more interpretation. Okay, here comes some fun now. Daniel 11, verse 5 and 6. It says, then the king of the south will be strong. Okay, who is this referring to? Remember, there were four generals. Look at the map. From Jerusalem, south is Egypt, okay? The king of the south is Egypt. The king of the north is the Seleucids. The king of the south is Ptolemy the first at this time. And the king of the north, which is the Seleucids, is Antiochus the first. Now, let me go through this chart and then we'll explain. Let's start with Antiochus the first. He has a kid, and guess what he names him? Antiochus the second. Okay? Antiochus the second marries a lady named Laodice the first. They have 2 sons and 3 daughters. One of those daughters is named Laodice the second. All right. Now, they have kids, and back then royalty used to marry within the family. And Antiochus the third marries Laodice the third, who give birth to Antiochus the fourth, Antiochus Epiphanes, the bad guy of the Hanukkah story. Let's move over to the king of the south, which is Egypt. Ptolemy the first has a kid and names him Ptolemy the second. He has a boy and a girl, he names the boy Ptolemy the Third, and he has a daughter named Bernice. Well, Ptolemy the Third gets married and has Ptolemy the Fourth and Ptolemy the Fifth. The fourth and the fifth are brothers, not fourth giving birth to the fifth. He had two kids. You're John 1 and you're John 2. Okay, when he said John, he might as well have said 1 or 2, come here. Okay, but anyway, I'm going to read the book of Daniel, and we're going to see how history has taken place. Okay, that's what we're going to do here. Daniel 11, verse 5 and 6. Then the king of the south, who is what country? This is Ptolemy the First, will be strong, but one of his princes shall be stronger than he and shall rule, and his authority will be a great authority. After some years, they shall make an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south will come to the king of the north to make an agreement, but she shall not retain the strength of her arm, and he and his arm will not endure, but she shall be given up, and in her attendance he who fathered her and he who supported her in those times. Okay, watch what happens. It says that the king of the north and the king of the south are going to make an alliance. What political alliances did I say earlier that they make? A marriage alliance. Okay, and it says the daughter of the king of the south is going to come to the king of the north. Well, guess what happens? Antiochus II is married to Laodice I. And Ptolemy II says, you need to divorce her and marry my daughter Bernice. So he does that. But guess what happens? She's not going to retain the strength of her arm, it says. And then it says she'll be given up, her attendants, he who fathered her, he who supported her in those times. Well, guess what happens? After this marriage, okay, Ptolemy II dies. They've had a son or an heir, but Ptolemy II dies. And the agreement was that the son between Antiochus II and Bernice would be the heir to the throne. Well, Laodice II didn't like that, or Laodice I, who had got dumped for this other lady who had these kids, didn't like the idea. So what does she do? She poisons Bernice. That's what happens. It says she'll not retain the strength of her arm. Why? She's dead. Not only does Laodice I poison Bernice, she also kills the son that's supposed to be the heir. Not only that, she's not so happy with her husband, and she poisons him too. She kills them all. Now, Ptolemy III, who's very unhappy at what happened to his sister, declares war. And then he goes and kills Laodice I. Okay? So this is what is happening. Now, and in case you didn't know, Ptolemy I was actually one of Alexander's 7 bodyguards. Okay? Okay, now, let me see where I'm at here. Okay, so let's go to Daniel 11, 7 through 9. And from a branch from her roots, one shall arise in his place, and he'll come against the army and enter the fortress of the king of the north, and he'll deal with them and prevail. He shall also carry off to Egypt their gods with their metal images, their precious vessels of silver and gold, and for some years he'll refrain from attacking the king of the north. Then the latter shall come into the realm of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. So we can see the Seleucids, the Egyptians are fighting back and forth. Sometimes the Seleucids win, sometimes Egypt wins. Okay, now look at this in Daniel 11, 10 through 13. His sons will wage war and assemble a multitude of great forces, which will keep coming and overflow and pass through, and again will carry the war as far as his fortress. Then the king of the south, now this is Ptolemy the Fourth, this is where we're at, moved with rage, will come out and fight against the king of the north. He will raise a great multitude, but it will be given into his hand. And when the multitude is taken away, his heart will be exalted, and he will cast down tens of thousands, but he will not prevail. For the king of the north, this is now Antiochus the third, will again raise a multitude greater than the first, and after some years he'll come on with a great army and abundant supplies. Okay, now we go to Daniel 11, 14 through 19. In those times, many shall rise against the king of the south. And look at this. And the violent among your own people. Wow. There's going to be violent believers that will lift themselves up in order to fulfill the vision. But they will fail. There are children of God who believe that this is supposedly the appointed time and we want to help fulfill the vision. They'll try to fulfill the vision and they're going to fail because it's not the appointed time. And it says, then the king of the north, the Seleucids, will come and throw up siege works and take a well-fortified city, and the forces of the south or Egypt will not stand, even of his best troops, for there will be no strength to stand. But he who comes against him will do as he wills, and none will stand before him, and he'll stand in the glorious land with destruction in his hand. He will set his face to come with strength of his whole kingdom, and he will bring terms. Look at this. He's going to bring terms of an agreement and perform them. Look at this. He will give him the daughter of women to destroy the kingdom, but it will not stand or be to his own advantage. Okay. If someone says, I give you my daughter, what does that mean? In marriage. So guess what? And let me look at where I'm at here. Antiochus, let me see. There's a marriage that takes place between the south and Egypt. Antiochus III and Laodice III have Antiochus Epiphanes IV. But they also have a daughter. And they give the daughter to Ptolemy. And her name is Cleopatra I. Now, in case you didn't know, there are 7 Cleopatras. It's the 7th one that is most famous. But this is Cleopatra the first was given in marriage. Okay? But it's not going to be to his advantage, it says, even though he gives his daughter to Ptolemy. And it says, afterward he'll turn his face to the coastlands and capture many of them. But a commander will put an end to his insolence. Indeed, he'll turn his insolence back upon him. Then he shall turn his face back toward the fortress of his own land. He'll stumble and fall and not be found. Now look at verse 20 through 24. Then shall arise in his place one who will send an exactor of tribute for the glory of the kingdom. Within a few days is all. He'll be broken, neither in anger nor in battle. In his place will rise a contemptible person to whom royal majesty has not been given. He shall come in without warning and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Armies will be utterly swept away before him and broken, even the prince of the covenant. And from the time that an alliance is made with him, he's going to act deceitfully. He'll become strong with a small people. Without warning, he'll come to the richest parts of the province and do what neither his fathers nor his fathers' fathers have done. Scattering among them plunder, spoil, and goods. He'll devise plans against strongholds, but only for a time. Now, look at verse 25 through 28. And he will stir up his power and his heart against the king of the south with a great army. So this is the Seleucids, Antiochus IV, stirring up an army against Egypt. And the king of the south will wage war with an exceedingly great and mighty army, but he will not stand, for plots shall be devised against him. Even those who eat his food shall break him. His army will be swept away, many will be fall down and slain. And as for the 2 kings, their hearts will be bent on doing evil. They'll speak lies at the same table. Can you imagine politicians speaking lies at the same table? Can't imagine. And he will return to his land with great wealth. His heart will be set against the holy covenant. Look at that. And he will work his will and return to his own land. Well, guess what happens? Here we are, down here. Ptolemy the 5th and Cleopatra have 2 kids. Ptolemy the 6th, and guess who else? Ptolemy the 7th. Okay, they have these 2 kids. Okay, now, These are Antiochus the Fourth, the guy of Hanukkah. They're his nephews. His sister Cleopatra the First is the one who gave birth to Ptolemy the Sixth and the Seventh. Well, guess what happens? He's upset and he goes to war against his Egyptian nephews. So there's a big battle, okay, that is taking place again. Now, look at Daniel 11, 29 through 35. This is all the Hanukkah story that many aren't aware of. It says, at the appointed time, he'll return and come to the south, which is Egypt, but it will not be this time as it was before, for ships of Kittim shall come against him. Kittim, let's look at this map, referring to Cyprus, but that was part of the Roman Empire. You can see Rome up at the top left, and you can see Alexandria, Egypt at the bottom. Well, guess what? Boats from Rome come over to Alexandria to talk to Antiochus IV about this war with his nephews. Egypt was in a covenant with Rome, okay? And it says that he will be afraid, Antiochus IV, and withdraw, okay? He's afraid the Romans are coming, and so, look at this. He will turn back and be enraged and take action against the Jewish people, the Holy Covenant. This is what starts Hanukkah, is the fact that he got his self kicked out of Egypt. He's headed back north to the Seleucid territory, and it says he will turn back and pay attention to those who forsake the Holy Covenant. Forces from him will appear and profane the temple and the fortress and will take away the regular burnt offering. There it is. This whole thing that happened at Hanukkah transpires from down here. And it says they'll set up the abomination that makes desolate. He'll seduce with flattery those who violate the covenant. But the people who know their God will stand firm and take action, and the wise among the people will make many understand. Though for some days they'll stumble by the sword and flame, captivity and plunder. This is the whole Hanukkah story. When they stumble, they'll receive a little help, and many will join themselves with flattery. Some of the wise will stumble, so that they may be refined, purified, made white until the time of the end, for it still waits the appointed time. Now, here is what happened. Why was he afraid? This is a very famous story. I have to tell you if you didn't know. Guess what happens? The captain of this ship is the Roman legion's commander, Gaius Popilius Laenas. He gets off the boat. Okay? And here, Antiochus had advanced to attack Ptolemy VI. He was met by the Roman legion's commander. And upon King Antiochus greeting the commander from some distance, waving high, holding out his right hand for a handshake, Popilius answered by, rather than extending his hand, he held out tablets which contained the Roman decree of the Senate that told Antiochus to read this first, thinking it not right to give the usual sign of friendship handshake, until Popilius knew the mind of Antiochus, whether he was to be regarded as a friend or foe. In other words, he says, you read these tablets that tells you that you can't attack Egypt and you have to leave. And then once I know your attitude, I'll shake your hand. I've got to decide if you're a friend or foe after you read the orders from Rome. So here Antiochus holds out his hand. He hands them instead orders from Rome. He has to go. And he says, before I shake your hand, read this to let me see if I need to shake your hand or not. And so, after reading the dispatch, which was an order to put an end to the war against Ptolemy, at once, Antiochus said that he desired to consult with his friends on the situation. And so what happened? Popilius, happening to have a stick in his hand, drew a circle around Antiochus with it and ordered him that he had to give his answer to the dispatch before he could step out of the circle. You have all the time you want, my king. You just cannot leave this circle until you decide. The king was taken aback at this haughty proceeding, and after a brief interval of embarrassed silence, he replied that he would do whatever the Romans demanded. Then Popilius and his colleagues shook him by the hand and all greeted him with warmth and said, "See you later." And off he goes, and the story of Hanukkah begins. So when you read the book of Daniel, you have to understand what is history, what is future, but also remember history repeats itself. All right. With that said, we're going to stand, and we're going to have the priestly blessing said by Josiah, and then we're going to jump into our Zoom meeting. Oh, good. Well, I guess that's good. He did get the link, right? Okay. All right. Well, good. We're timing this good. Hopefully, he will jump on. If not, we will not have the Zoom meeting with Chuck Chrismeyer. All right. So let's pray. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, we just thank you so much for this time that we can come and learn history, which is really his story. It's your story. It's your story of how much you are personally involved in the affairs of man. God, you always interject yourself into human history, not only on a global scale, national scale, but even on the scale of each individual. And I just thank you, Lord, that you care for each and every one of us. Father, I pray that each one of us would prepare a beautiful place according to the pattern in our hearts to welcome you. Father, we thank you as we're studying the book of Daniel, and we're learning these things that concern our day as well. So, Father, open up our eyes that we could see and we can understand what the Spirit is saying to us in our day. In Yeshua's name, amen. And God told Moses to tell Aaron, I want you to say this blessing over my people. And in so doing, not only will I bless them, but I'm going to place my name upon them. And this is what he told him to say.
Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'hunecha Yisa Adonai panav elecha Ve'yasem lecha Shalom.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In that name above all names, Eyeh, Asher, Eyeh. Amen. You're dismissed. We can always live stream this and tape it later. All right. You're dismissed. Be blessed.